students, how are you all? Hope you are safe and sound and fit and fine. A warm welcome to English class. I am Sarita and today we are going to start a new topic of grammar, verb. So verb is a part of speech. So there are 8 parts of speech: noun, pronoun, verb, adverb, adjective, preposition, conjunctions and interjections. So the noun, pronoun, verb and adverb already we have completed. Now we are moving on to the part of speech, verb. So first of all we should know what are the verbs. So from the very beginning we are learning about the verbs. They denote actions performed in a sentence. So all the action verbs are called as verbs, as see, watch, go, and whatever actions we are doing. For example, teaching, and now I am teaching you, walking, running. So all these words are called as verbs. There are 2 kinds of verbs in grammar: transitive and intransitive. Transitive verbs require object to complete their meaning, but intransitive verb, they do not require any object to complete their meaning. For example, intransitive verb, she left the keys on the table. So here if we ask the question from the verb left, that she left what? The keys. So we are getting the answer as the keys. So it becomes the object of the sentence. That's why this verb left is a transitive verb. So let us see one example of intransitive verb. We talked for hours. They laughed uncontrollably. So here in this sentence, if we ask the question from the verb, they laughed what? We are not getting any answer. So that's why this verb laughed is not having any object, and still it is giving the complete meaning. That's why it is called as intransitive verb. In this sentence also, we talked for hours. We talked what? That is not mentioned. So we don't have any object in this sentence. So that's why the verb talked is called as intransitive verb. Let us see one more example of transitive verb. He sent her a letter. Now if we ask the question from the verb sent, he sent what? A letter. So, but one more object is also there in the sentence. He sent a letter to whom? He sent the letter to her. So her becomes indirect object and a letter becomes direct object. So when the verb is having a question of what, then it gives the answer of direct object, and when it is in relation to whom it is done, to whom the action is done, or for whom the action is done, then that answer will be indirect object. So in this sentence, a letter is a direct object, her is an indirect object. Let us move on to another example. The hungry baby was crying since morning. Can you guess what kind of verb it is? Transitive or intransitive? So the hungry baby was crying what? Are we getting any answer? No. So it becomes, the verb crying becomes an intransitive verb, as we don't have any object in this. Let us see one more example. Can I buy you a drink? So in this again, if we ask the question from the verb, what can I buy? A drink. So a drink becomes direct object, and for whom I can buy? You. So you becomes indirect object. We can also interchange the positions of direct and indirect object, like if I change in this sentence, can I buy a drink for you? But we have to put a preposition before the indirect object if we are changing the positions of the object. So this way we can change the positions as well, and we can find out direct object and indirect object very easily by asking the question from the verb of to whom, for whom or what, as we have done earlier also. So let us see some patterns of the verb patterns. as we have seen in the non-finites also. So let's see a few examples of verb patterns. The first kind of verb pattern is V1 plus V1 ing. For example, I prefer waking up early in the morning. So prefer is V1 here. Then waking is V1 plus ing. So here it becomes a pattern V1 plus V1 plus ing. I prefer waking up in the morning. One more example we can see like this. I avoid eating so much of sweets. So avoid is V1, then eating V1 plus ing. So it becomes a pattern of verb. So let's talk about the second pattern of the verb. Verb plus infinitive, with or without to. As we have learnt about non-finites, we have learnt about infinitives and bare infinitives. So without to are bare infinitives and with to are called as infinitives. So here we can see one example. I can meet you in the afternoon. It is an example of the verb without to and it becomes verb plus infinitive. So here we can see this example. Let us move on to the next pattern. Verb plus preposition plus V1 ing. So here it becomes a pattern. I always focus on understanding on the most important part of a problem. So here focus is the verb, then on is the preposition, then understanding is V1 ing. So it becomes a pattern and after preposition it takes the verb V1 ing. So it becomes a pattern which is always followed in grammar. So let us move on to the next kinds of verb. Reflexive verb. In reflexive verb there we can see reflexive pronouns in the sentence, and reflexive verbs has same subject as well as the same object. For example, Joshi gifted himself a new bicycle. So Joshi himself gifted. So he has gifted to himself. So it becomes a reflexive verb. Gifted becomes a reflexive verb because here subject and object are same. So one more example we can see here. I am preparing myself for the science Olympiad. So I and myself, the subject and object are same. So again preparing becomes a reflexive verb. So these are all kinds of patterns and verbs we have learnt. So let's have a small recap whatever we have learnt so far. So we have learnt about the verbs. They denote actions performed in a sentence, and with many examples we have seen: see, watch, walk, teach. So such kinds of words are called as action words. There are two kinds of verbs, transitive and intransitive. Transitive verbs always require objects with them. Intransitive verb, they do not require any objects with them and still they have complete meaning. Here we have seen this example. She left the keys on the table. So here the keys is the object of the sentence. So the verb left becomes transitive verb. Again in this example, they laughed uncontrollably. Here the verb laughed is intransitive verb because it is not carrying an object with it. So these were the examples of transitive and intransitive verbs. Then we have learnt about the verb patterns. The first kind of verb pattern is V1 plus V1 ing. So for example, I avoid eating sweets in the morning. So here avoid is V1 and then eating becomes V1 plus V1 ing. So same like this example. And then verb plus infinitive, with or without to, as we have learnt about the infinitives and bare infinitives. So here we have seen the example of bare infinitive. I can meet you in the afternoon. So this was the example of the verb without to. Then the next pattern was verb plus preposition plus V1 ing. For example, I always focus on understanding. So focus is V1 verb, then on is the preposition. After preposition V1 ing. So after preposition we use V1 ing forms of the verb. So it becomes a pattern of the verb which is followed in grammar always. Then we have learnt about the reflexive verbs. In reflexive verbs we have seen that the subject and object are same and we have seen this example, and now I can take one more example. I am preparing myself for the science Olympiad. So myself and I are the same, subject and object are the same, so I am preparing myself. So here the verb preparing becomes a reflexive verb. So whatever we have learned so far, I hope you all have understood, children, and if you have any doubts, you can call me or you can message me. So till then, take care, bye bye.